Good morning. Today we are going to be evaluating end roots, and we're also going to be using rational exponents and solving equations which have radicals within them. So let's go and start by going over some of the basics that we have learned before. If you guys remember, when we have the square root of 4, we're looking for a number that multiplied by itself 2 times will give us 4, which will be 2. We have the cube root of 8. We're looking for a number that multiplied by itself 3 times will give us 8, and that'll be 2. We have the fourth root of 16. We're looking for a number that multiplied by itself 4 times. So this little 4. We're looking for a number that multiplied by itself 4 times will give us 16, and that is equal to 2. We can also write an end root as an exponent. So instead of writing the square root of 4, remember that this is the square root. And we don't write down the 2 because we use it so often, we don't need the 2. But the square root of 4 can be written down as 4 to the 1/2, and that'll be 2. The cube root of 8 will be 8 to the 1/3, which is 2. The fourth root of 16 will be 16 to the 1/4, which is 2. So radicals can be written down as rational exponents. Anytime, and here's the regular format, the denominator becomes the root. The top number, the numerator, becomes the exponent. So I need to be able to rewrite, on example number 1, I need to rewrite the following expressions using rational exponents. Remember, the word rational comes from the word ratio, and ratio is a fraction. So I want to be able to write this as a number that has an exponent that's a fraction. This will be 5. It's going to be a fraction. The root becomes the denominator. Now, what is the exponent for this 5? There's no exponent, so automatically there's a 1. So on this first example, the only thing that we're doing, we are rewriting it. We are now evaluating, now to example number 3. Letter B will be 11. I need to be able to rewrite this as a rational exponent, so it'll be a fraction for the exponent. The root becomes the denominator, and that'll be to the second power. That'll be 2/3. The next one. Go and try the next one, see what you get, and we can compare answers. Go and pause it, work it out. Great. So for letter C, because it's a negative, I'm going to place it in parentheses. It's going to be a fraction. The root becomes the denominator. And then we have a 5 on top. That's the exponent. So it'll be -3 to the 5/7. On example number 2, they ask you to write the following expressions using radical. Right now they have rational exponents, and we need to be able to rewrite it with a radical. Remember, a radical is just what we used to call before a square root, but this is a radical. I basically need to be able to do the opposite. So it'll be 4 inside. The denominator is the root, and that'll be to the power of 7. Let's do the next one. The 5 inside. The denominator is the root, and to the power of 1, but I don't need to write down the power of 1. I can just leave it as square root of 5. Remember, because there's a 2, we don't necessarily need to write the 2 either. Automatically, we know if there's no number there, there's a 2. The last one will be radical, -8. The 5 is the root, and to the power of 4. On example number 3, I do need to be able to evaluate it. So I need to be able to rewrite it as a radical notation, same thing that we did here, but then we need to be able to evaluate it. So we're going to rewrite it. So it'll be radical 32 The denominator of the exponent becomes the root. This is to the 4th power. I want to be able to evaluate what's inside the parentheses first. So one number multiplied by itself 5 times will give us 32. And if you're not sure, just start with 1. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. Is that 32? No. Then continue. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 3, times 2 is 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. And if not, continue with 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So in this case, will be 2 to the power of 4. Now 2 to the power of 4 is 2 times 2, which is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So that'll be 16. So your final answer will be 16. For the next one, we're going to go through the same process. Go ahead and pause it. See if you guys can do it by yourself, and then we can work it out and double check your answer. Go ahead and pause it. Great. So for letter B, I'm going to place my radical negative 125. My denominator becomes my root, and that'll be to the power of 2. So the cube root of negative 125, I'm looking for a number that multiplied by itself 3 times will give me negative 125. Be careful, it's not 5, because 5 times 5 is 25, times 5 is positive 125. I need negative 125, so it'll be negative 5. And then to the second power, negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. Letter C, I'm going to go through the same process. Radical, negative 27. The denominator becomes the root, and to the 4th power. So I'm looking for a number that multiplied by itself 3 times will give me negative 27. So it'll be negative 3. To the 4th power, negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, times negative 3 is negative 27, times negative 3 is positive 81. Now let's continue with the backside to be able to solve equations. When we are taking the root on both sides, when we're solving an equation, if the root, if the n is even, then we're going to have plus or minus, just like we covered before. And we cannot have a negative number inside the radical if the root is even. If this number is even and there's a negative inside, there will be no solution. In the other case, if the root is odd, if this number is odd, 3, 5, it is okay to have a negative number, but we no longer have a plus or minus. So let's go and start with example number 1, example 4a. I'm going to solve, and very similar process as solving equations. I'm going to divide by 6, that will cancel. X to the 3rd power is equal to, if you're not sure what negative 1296 is divided by 6 is, just do the long division on the side. But that will give you negative 216. Then I want to get rid of the cube, so I'm going to take the cube root on both sides, because that will cancel the cube root and the cube cancels. So that's x. I'm looking for a number that multiplied by itself 3 times will give me negative 216, which is negative 6. Remember, if this is odd, you no longer need a plus or minus. Let's do letter B. Draw the line. I'm going to move my 5 to the right. I want to be able to leave this by itself. So I'm going to move the 5 to the right, becomes a negative 5. That will give me x minus 4 to the 4th is equal to 81. Now, if you guys want to minus 5 on both sides, it's the same process, and you get the same answer. Now, I want to be able to cancel to the 4th power, so I'm going to take the 4th root on both sides. So we have x minus 4 is equal to, I'm looking for a number that multiplied by itself 4 times will give me 81, and that'll be 3, because 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, times 3 is 81. Now, I'm missing something, because there's even I'm going to have a plus or minus. Only when it's even. If it's odd, you don't. But if it's the little root is even, that will give us a plus or minus. When we take the root on both sides and this number is even, plus or minus. And then the last step is just to move the -4 to the right to leave x by itself, or you can add 4 on both sides. X is equal to 4 plus or minus 3. And we're going to have two solutions, 4 plus 3 and 4 minus 3. So x is equal to 7 or x is equal to 1. Letter C. Try letter C and D. See if you guys can do it by yourselves, and then we can work it out. Go ahead and pause it. Great. So for letter C, I want to be able to leave the x cubed by itself, so then I can take the cube root on both sides. I'm not going to move my 20 to the right because it's a -20. I have -2x to the third is equal to 16. Now some of you guys want to take the cube root here. You can't. You want to be able to isolate the x cubed. You want to get rid of the -2. It's multiplying, so I'm going to divide by -2. That will cancel. X cubed is equal to -8. And the last step is to take the fifth root or the third root. That cancels. So x is equal to -2. I'm looking for a number that multiplied by itself 3 times will give me -8, which is -2. Remember, no plus or minus, only if it's even. Letter D. I'm going to move my 1 to the right because it's a positive 1. We have 2x plus 3 to the 4th power is equal to -162. Now, I want to be able to leave the x plus 3 to the 4th power by itself so I can get rid of the 4th power. Many of you guys are tempted to distribute the 2, which you can't because of the 4th power. You want to be able to leave this by itself. I'm going to divide by 2. The 2's cancel. So we just have x plus 3 to the 4th power is equal to -81. Now I'm going to take the 4th root on both sides. That will cancel. But we do have a problem here. If this is even, you cannot have a negative number inside. So this will be no solution. Be careful. Even number, you cannot have a negative number inside. If it's an odd root, it is okay to have a negative number. So this will conclude the lesson for today. Please email me if you have any questions, and thanks for your time. Have a great day.